Okay, somebody posted a comment to censor me on their piece of mindful uh, website. It says that if I'm calling this is part of the climate psy-op to rest quote science on predictions that never come true. And then another person says, I thought you were being serious when you said 4 years claims about industry heating the earth was a very long running psy-op. There's loads of long running psy-ops. Germ theory and vaccination being two notable examples. Jacob Nordangård is a Swedish researcher who was originally a member of the Green Party, but then began to research the environmental movement to discover that the Rockefellers were behind it. He also says something about fellow Swede Arrhenius being a rather suspect character, but I can't find it now. Perhaps it was in a video. Arrhenius thought an increase in CO2 would be a good thing for the planet and greening it. He published a book, Rockefeller Controlling the Game, which I haven't read, but it seems good. Okay, well, so I don't even know if I can respond on that website anymore since the guy who runs the website told me to go away. But here's the book on global warming science, the scientific foundation for the climate change forecast. And these two guys are professors in physics at University of Chicago. So they have all the main science studies. And you can watch their lectures on YouTube at University of Chicago. I made a playlist out of them. So the first paper is by Joseph Fourier, 1827. So it's 200 years ago. Then we will quickly scan through the paper. Here's the paper. So each paper that they publish in here, they add their own commentary to explain the paper. And so we've had global warming science for 200 years. So to claim it's a psy-op controlled by the Rockefellers is not accurate. And so he calls it dark heat, and he says the atmosphere produces an effect of the same sort. And the dark heat is what is actually infrared radiation. And then he says right here, the effects of human industry modify the temperature of each climate. So he already knows that the effects of human industry are heating up the planet. And he calls it radiant heat. So that's what infrared radiation is. And then he says it rises when heated. Dark heat. So we've had global warming science for 200 years. And anyway, so that's the very first global warming science paper. And then you can read the rest of the science papers that continue in this book. Greenhouse effect. The next one is 1861, John Tyndall. So those are before Arrhenius. And I have there's also another lady, I can't remember her name, Foote, and she actually discovered that CO2 causes global warming before John Tyndall. So, but since she was a woman, I think she might have been connected to John Tyndall. Can't remember. Anyway, um, yeah. Have I read every paper in this book? No, but there's about 30 of them. 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 papers in this book that go from 1824, so that's 200 years ago, to year 2000, 2002, 2005. So 2005 is the most recent one, but obviously there's been a lot of science since 2005 on abrupt global warming, using satellites and ocean sensors and studying ice cores and tree rings and the Keeling curve, which they're trying to defund. They're trying to destroy NOAA. They want to defund all the global warming science, and then some governments are not even allowed to say global warming or climate change in any government agency. Actually, the federal government is doing that too. They're saying you can't, if you are funded by the government, you can't mention global warming or climate change. So they're trying to censor all the science. And yeah, so that's the real psy-op, is the corporate uh, junk science that claims that abrupt global warming isn't real. But if you want the real goods on abrupt global warming, go to arcticnewsblogspot.com. And I have corresponded with Raymond Pierre Humbert, who's the co-author of this book. He was at University of Chicago as a physics professor, and now he's at Oxford University. But he's just one, well, he and David Archer, they're just one physics class at one school. But there's literally like, what do they say, 98%? Actually, Norman, what? Well, they've there was a book on the corporate planet or something like that. I mean, these are structural problems. So you have large corporations that are the main emitters of CO2. And so, for example, like in China, they do top-down environmental policies. So, like China was pretty much all bicycles in the 1980s, and then they started getting cars, and now they're switching to electric cars because they're top down. And I'm not saying that that will fix everything, because then you have the aerosol masking effect, which James E. Hansen now focuses on the environmental, the aerosol masking effect. So if you look that up, aerosol masking effect. This guy, Daniel Rosenfeld, his research, he discovered that it's twice as bad as previously thought. So that means that the sulfur pollution is actually reflecting sunlight, and so it's artificially cooling the planet. And that's what came out in the 1970s, is they discovered this aerosol masking effect had been cooling to offset the global warming. That really started with farming, because when you spread farming around the world, we did deforestation. But it just skyrocketed after, because when you're burning coal and oil, that's literally hundreds of millions of years of photosynthesis that's been sequestered as carbon. as so the all this energy actually comes from photon radiation, and that's the big point of Raymond Pierre Humbert. So you can read his article, Physics Today. It's in Physics Today on the cause of global warming. Physics Today, 2011, Raymond Pierre Humbert. Yeah, so if you read that article right there, and that will give the quantum physics origin of global warming. So I'm gonna post this link as my reply to those blog comments telling me to go away and trying to debunk the conspiracy. Yes, I realize that there's um, some big money liberal behind funding science. I realize that science is funded by the aristocrats and the elites, and I realize that science did cause global warming. So what's going to fix global warming? One word: algae. Algae, because oil and coal are from algae, and algae can sequester 100 gigatons of CO2 per year, because when you have photosynthesis by algae, you're using blue light and you get 100% energy transfer, as it's proven to be quantum non-locality. And so that's the algae's been alive on Earth for 3 billion years. And yeah, so what happened is the whaling industry was the first oil industry, and they destroyed like millions of whales, something like 10 to 20 million whales. And whales fertilized the ocean when they came up to breathe, and that's what caused the algae blooms. So now they're going to do use volcanic dust, because that's a natural fertilizer for algae growth. And Sir David King, he's working on that with um, island countries, because you can bypass the UN. If the island countries, they have sovereignty to spread the volcanic ash, and they're using rice hulls from Goa, India, to stabilize the ash so they can spread it. And they're making a mix to do this, and then the Chinese scientists realized if you use photobioreactors, you can grow as near ocean algae farms, and you can sequester like another 50 gigatons of algae. There's another guy, Raphael Jovin, and he's a double PhD in marine biology, and he started a company called Brilliant Planet to also have near ocean algae farms in the desert to grow algae and then sequester it as carbon into the desert, because algae is 50% carbon. So there you go. And if we don't do that, then the algae we'll get these toxic algae blooms, and the algae will grow anyway and eventually sequester the carbon on its own. It's going to do it through biological annihilation, because the rate of CO2 growth it's the fastest it's ever been in the history of life on Earth. And we've already bypassed the ice age cycles of the past 800,000 years. And so the CO2 levels are already, like, I don't know, from like as high as they were, I don't know, 20 million years ago or something. Okay.